So we've set up this webinar today, which is live, which you will probably spot as it progresses, to really just introduce the firm to those of you who may be interested and to answer some questions that you might have about life as a consultant and how consultancy works here. And then I'm going to pick Ian's brains and ask him some questions about life as a consultant so that you can hear it from someone who's actually living and breathing it as opposed to just hearing it about it from me. So let's get started. So Ian, what made you first consider consultancy as a career option?
Well, Marie, it's kind of quite a long story, but I'll try and keep it really short. But I think I found myself in the sort of situation that many people do at my stage of life, which was because I've been a consultant here since 2012, which was that I was relatively experienced, and I felt that I wasn't really being exploited properly or being given the opportunities that I thought I deserved. So I had been at a large firm since I was a trainee which was 1995 until 2012, something like that. And I had progressed slowly and surely up the ladder, but I did feel like part of the furniture. I then left that firm to go to another firm who offered me an opportunity to set up a kind of a vulnerable adult grouping, specializing in the law around that area. And I just found it difficult to adapt to a situation where they were scrutinizing very closely what I was doing, because I didn't have the level of trust that I built up at the last firm.
Yes.
So I was being given new opportunities, but I remember being challenged about one entry in my Outlook diary where I'd set a reminder for myself as a diary entry for taking some dry cleaning to be done. And they actually challenged me about that. Said, "You've blocked out an hour to do dry cleaning." And I said, "No, I haven't. It's just a diary reminder that I've just got to nip out." And I just thought, well, if that's the level of trust that you're placing in me, then what hope have I got? So I felt quite frustrated by that. And I remember talking to a colleague of mine who I met for lunch and said, "Look, I'm setting up this new unit. I'm operating on my own. I've got to come up with all the ideas. I'm not really getting paid commensurately with the responsibility of that. It's almost like running my own firm." But I didn't have really, or didn't think I had the entrepreneurial spirit to actually make a difference. But then I found with Richard Nelson, LLP, that I did. And it's been a great success. Brilliant. And I'm doing that, and I'm continuing to doing that role since 2012.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. It's really interesting for me to hear people's background stories in terms of why consultancy really appeals to them. And Ian's reference is really sort of quite common in the sense that people get a little bit frustrated or a little bit boxed in. Sometimes people feel they've been looked over for promotions and that sort of thing. Or just a bit stymied and controlled in an environment where actually they feel that they want to be treated as a grown-up and have a bit more flexibility and autonomy. So no, that's really interesting. Thank you. I'm going to be asking Ian some questions of things that I think you might want to know about consultancy, but please do put in the live chat any questions if you've got any questions that you would like to ask either myself or Ian, and we'll be happy to accommodate them as we go through. So Ian, how did you find the transition from traditional employment to consultancy? How was that journey for you?
Well, I found it quite seamless, really, because I'd started off doing claimant personal injury when I was first qualified, and then I went into contested probate. And in both those situations, I was more or less working on my own amongst a wider team that did something slightly different. So I was always having to kind of justify myself and monitor myself and do something that's slightly different to those around me. So, what I found specifically with a big firm was that I would know my clients best, and I would think to myself, right, a bill needs to be raised on this file, but I just don't think it's the right time to raise it yet, because psychologically we've got a hearing coming up. I know that that's going to go very well for us. The client will be more than happy to pay what's due after that juncture, but right now it's going to add extra stress to the situation, and so on. And then I would find that I was collared by the departmental lead saying, why aren't you billing this file? And I'd say, it's the wrong time. There might be a complaint that will absorb management time and so on. And they would say, no, it needs to be billed. And I say, no, it's the wrong time. So we would constantly have that kind of friction in the firm that I used to work for. So what I found as a consultant was that I could follow those instincts. And when I do raise invoices now, more or less every single one of them is paid within 7 days, which I always say is good business.
Yes.
It kind of, you might take a few risks here and there. You might not perhaps get exactly the work in progress build that you want to, but you get paid regularly because you're monitoring that file and you know the client best.
Yes. Yeah.
So to that extent, I was quite used to working on my own, but I now had the freedom to follow. Beg your pardon. Schoolboy error
see,
there.
We are live, so just excuse this interruption. No worries. Hazard of the trade.
Ask me another question.
So, but it's really interesting to hear Ian comment on having sort of flexibility and that control in terms of the client relationship and not having to be stymied really by sort of expectations and rules and procedures that are sort of imposed on people in traditional sort of law firms. And that's one of the things that we really believe here when we operate our consultancy model, is that the consultants know their clients better than we do as a firm. And so things like timings of bills, even what rate to bill them at, and all those sorts of things, the consultant just enjoys that sort of genuine autonomy, which I think most senior solicitors particularly do seem to sort of really value.
And I think also, even going back to the year 2000 or even a bit before, I often used to wonder, and doing my 9 till 6 hours at work as an young employed solicitor, I always used to think to myself, I'm not necessarily best within these hours. Why doesn't this firm give me the latitude to work when I'm performing at my best? Yes. Which is that some days I start later, some days I might start earlier, but I'll get my work done within the rhythms that work with me, and then everyone's a winner. I'm more relaxed, I'm less stressed, and the firm gets a profitable outcome. And obviously we would now call that hybrid working.
Yes.
Brought on by COVID and so on. But even back then, I didn't really know why firms wanted to constrain you within a particular operating process, which may not suit you and which may not be as profitable for the firm. But they do, and they still do now.
Yes.
Whereas now, as I said, as a consultant, some days I can start later, some days I start work earlier. I can make time for those things that are most important for me, as long as I continue to meet the commitments that I have to my clients, which come first and foremost. Definitely.
And one of the things that I often say to potential new consultants who I'm having an informal chat with is that it doesn't matter to us as a firm what time you work, as long as your clients are happy and they're being looked after. And actually, for some clients, that might mean having a consultation in the evening because that suits their diary. As long as that works for the consultant as well, it just gives people that genuine flexibility. And I think whilst a lot of firms will say these days that they are family friendly, it doesn't mean that when you go to the sports day or your child is unwell or your elderly relative has a doctor's appointment or whatever it might be, it doesn't mean that eyebrows aren't raised and that people are not made to feel guilty when they need to take sort of a bit of time out from their day, even if they're perfectly likely and able to sort of make up for that sort of later on in the week or whatever. So yeah, that's definitely one of that flexibility is one of the benefits of consultants. I know we have at least one or two consultants that just don't work in the mornings because that doesn't suit them. And I know not to call them before 12 o'clock, and that's fine. And they'll work in the evenings, and in the afternoons, but as long as they're not calling me at 3 a.m. when it suits them to work, then that seems to be absolutely fine. Okay, no, that's great.
I think to offer full disclosure as well, there is a flip side to that.
Yes.
Which is that you are very personally responsible for your caseload. Some of the consultants work in tandem with others in a kind of broader team. Some consultants employ on a part-time basis an assistant to help them, maybe their husband or wife sometimes helps out. But ultimately, the buck does stop with you, and the type of work that I do, which is kind of vulnerable adult representation, mental capacity disputes, court protection type of work. There's no one else here that will help me with that necessarily. So there have been times when I have been pacing up and down in the airport lounge, waiting for a plane, tapping out something that's really urgent on the laptop, and I think to myself, maybe in a big firm, I could have left this in the hands of somebody else.
Yes, that's true.
And, you do need to be committed, because there will be times when your life is interrupted by work. But then again, my other experience is that even at a senior level, there's no plateau of relaxation anymore in firms. Even senior partners are beholden to the demands of financial directors, clients, obviously, and so on. And the idea that you can all knock off at 5:30 is not that realistic. So.
Yeah, and that's great, and that's what we're here to sort of really try and explain, what it's really like as a consultancy, as opposed to just the really good bits. This is it, sort of warts and all, in terms of what life can be like. And I think that lots of lawyers would empathise with that in terms of the concept of things being urgent, and us all looking after our clients and making sure urgent deadlines are met, and that sort of thing.
And we were discussing only yesterday that we try and portray this really honestly to our clients in our client engagement letter. So we have a paragraph that says there may be times that when we cannot respond as quickly as we'd like to your email or whatever, because there are these constraints on time on consultants, because there's only us dealing with the matter. But you will always have my personal attention, and I will be the person who you remain in contact with. And I don't think, my experience is that any client has ever raised an eyebrow about that. They like the idea that they've got a lawyer, not a team of lawyers, not having to reach the most senior lawyer through the portal of a junior lawyer who may not be able to contact them. And they've got me, and I deal with everything. And I think in this day and age of call centers and being left on hold and everything, that is massively important. That personal relationship is massively important to clients. And if they have to wait a little bit more until the nativity play is over, then so
they value that. I think, people buy from people, don't they, as a sort of common saying. And I think that personal relationship is increasingly important in today's age. We've got a question from one of you, which is absolutely brilliant. So somebody's asked, in order to be a consultant, is a client following compulsory? So I'll give you my perspective on that, and then I'll invite Ian as a consultant to do the same. So my answer to that is that it's largely dependent on what area of law you specialise in, because candidly, as a firm, we're probably better at generating some types of work than others. So I would always say to somebody from the outset that if you can you don't have to have a full following, and not many of our consultants do arrive with that, but some do. But you do need to have some entrepreneurial spirit and some ability to network and generate sort of some interest in some of your own work. And then the firm can and will introduce work to our consultants as well. and taken as a complete average across the board, between 35 and 40% of the files that our consultants open have come from introductions from the firm or from a colleague. So it's not nothing, but it's not the majority either. But I will say that percentage can go significantly higher or lower in different sort of teams. So it really does depend on the area of work. But I certainly would be happy after this, if anyone's interested in having a sort of one-to-one private discussion, not on LinkedIn, with me, then I'll be happy to sort of answer those questions and tailor those answers specifically to people. But Ian, how have you found that since coming as a consultant a number of years ago now? What's your experience about needing a following?
Well, in my area of work, and the fact that I'm not trying to buy in work for a broad team, I have always found enough work from the combination of my own contacts, people referring things to me, and also the website is quite sophisticated in generating really good quality referrals. And I don't really do any marketing myself. I don't need to. And I'm often contacted by more clients than I can really accommodate. And I have to do what I can to manage that, and I have to turn some people away or put people in touch with other people sometimes. So my situation is perhaps slightly unusual. But I think you do need to have reached a point of some confidence in your own abilities so that you can go out for a coffee with someone, sell your particular expertise, go into a room, make a conversation, perhaps conduct a seminar. You know, all of these things are actively supported by the firm. They can provide some support with ideas for setting up your own website page. Some consultants have their own websites.
Yeah, they do, yeah.
So they're not necessarily first and foremost affiliated with Richard Nelson. So, you know, the support will be there to do whatever will generate more work, and the percentage fee share is greater for those areas of work that you generate yourself. So there is a financial incentive to get out there and make those connections.
No, that's great to hear in terms of how Ian feels about the support that we can offer in terms of marketing. And Ian is perhaps one of our consultants who just has to say at times, I am at capacity, so I can't deal with anything new right now. And we've got a few others that get to that sort of position sometimes as well. So yeah, no, that's absolutely great. Well, so thank you very much for that question, and please do put more questions in the box, because we're happy to answer the questions that you want to ask as opposed to what we think you might want to know. However, on that topic, so Ian, in terms of feeling like part of a team despite being a self-employed consultant and not having that traditional structure around you, do you feel that the firm helps you to sort of foster that sense of community, or are there times perhaps when a consultant might feel a little bit more isolated? What's your experience of that?
Well, I'm in the fortunate position of living in Nottingham, which is where our head office is. So I'm only 20 minutes drive away from the office. So I tend to come in 2 or 3 days a week and do a kind of hybrid existence. But the majority of the consultants do work from home or work from a rented office or some kind of facility where they can be one step removed from home life. And some of them meet up together as little groupings, either as a family law team, or they might just have social groupings. We run a firm series of social events, probably 3 or 4 times a year, particularly focused on bringing the consultants in from all over the country. We have the training day with motivational speakers and so on, which is always a big success. So there is a lot of that sort of companionship available, but you do tend to find that individual consultants just find a synergy with one or two others. And if their categories of work are compatible, there's nothing to stop those synergies working quite well in terms of referral. And obviously, if a consultant refers a job to another consultant, then they both receive a financial benefit from that process through the firm's consultancy arrangements.
Yeah, and that's worked quite well to encourage people to keep work in-house, so to speak, rather than sending it down the road to a friend elsewhere. Well, that's great to hear in terms of the support and sense of the community. I think that from my sort of observations, if you like, that it can really vary from person to person in terms of how much community they want to foster. Some people very much like to just sort of get their head down, get on with it, and really focus on generating work and doing work. Other people are much more sort of sociable by nature and need that sort of external input and communication, and so therefore there are avenues by which that they can sort of facilitate that. So,
and I've noticed that with the growth of this as a sector, there's lots of relatively cheap office accommodation which are deliberately designed to put compatible industries together.
Yes,
so you can hire an office 15 minutes walk from your house with a group of bioscience collaborators or something, and if your work is in commercial litigation, you can specialize in bioscience, and all sorts of things could grow from that. So if you want to have not necessarily be surrounded by lawyers, but there is a relatively cheap and economic way of operating in that way, and of course that office expense would, for tax purposes, be offset against your profits, so you pay less tax as well.
Always a win.
So, I've learned a lot about that on my journey.
I'm sure. We've got another question from a viewer, which is brilliant. Can the person ask if, Ian, you found consultancy to be more financially rewarding than traditional employed practice? It's a bit of a personal question.
The quick answer is an absolute yes. So I started in 2012, and I'm now earning approximately twice as much as I did as an associate solicitor in 2012.
Okay.
So and I got to that stage probably within 4 or 5 years, something like that. So,
okay.
And there is a kind of ceiling to what you can earn based on your working hard at your chosen hourly rate. There is a bit of a glass ceiling there. So if you were a business operating as a firm, you would be thinking of recruiting a new person, expanding, speculating to accumulate.
Yes.
I don't want to do that. I've hit that ceiling, but I think it's the equivalent of a law firm partner's income. So I can do it, but I do things at my level, in my way, which is great.
Yeah, perfect. I think the ability, there's absolutely always the ability for a solicitor to earn more as a consultant, but they are participating in the risk reward, aren't they? And so that's you would actually expect as if it's successful, you would expect to sort of earn more, I think, in a consultancy model to get that reward.
Which in the same way as obviously if you were a junior partner in a firm, and you had hit your target, you would be given a bigger target next year to earn the same amount.
Well,
if you want to, you would.
It's true. It's true.
It's reality of it. And nothing stays the same. There's no plateau anymore where people go off and play golf for half the week, like back in my day when I first started. And if you want to earn more and progress in the business of a law firm, much will be demanded from you. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted. If you want to be in control of that and say, well, I will work harder and then I'll earn more, then that's all you need to do.
Yeah, no, it's true. There's only
work smarter.
Yes, there's so many hours, only so many hours in the day that people want to dedicate to work. and most people have a sensible threshold in terms of what that hourly rate should sort of look like. So yeah, certainly that's a great answer. I'm really pleased, obviously, that it has worked out for you, and hence why you stayed so many years with us. Still here. Hopefully for many more years to come.
It's the people, Marie.
Of course, it's the people. We've got a couple more questions flying in, which is great. One question is, what's the issue in terms of professional indemnity insurance, and what a consultant need to get their own? So I can answer that because that's quite a quick question. So all of our consultants work under the firm's umbrella and therefore are covered completely under the firm's professional indemnity insurance. And as a firm, our limit is 10 million, although obviously we try not to push the edges of that, and we seek to have no claims. But of course, it's better to have the policy there than not need it. So yes, the short answer is that consultants would be covered and don't need to have their own insurance in place. And that's really one of the benefits of being a consultant compared to setting up your own firm, where you'd have the responsibility for sourcing, paying for indemnity insurance, and then when you close down, having to pay for runoff cover, all those sorts of things.
I know people who operate their own employment law firm as themselves, so they are the one and only director and employee. They have to deal with all the compliance aspects of that. They have to deal with all the management aspects of that. They have to deal with all the tax planning and the reporting matter of that. They have to be the culp and the COFA and all the rest of it. And now effectively through the fee share scheme with Richard Nelson LLP, you're placing all those delightful things on Marie. And I'm
who enjoys it, weirdly.
I'm fixed smile. And I'm doing the legal work. So if I decided to set myself up as Ian Cranefield LLP, I would probably be spending 50% of my time and a lot of sleepless nights wondering about those areas that I'm not skilled in, such as compliance and things like that, and having to keep up with all the changes that are happening. So I'm surrendering a proportion of my income for somebody else to do all those delightful things. So I'm quite happy with that. Yeah,
we play to our strengths.
Yeah.
Another question that's come in is how many years post-qualification experience do we require for people to join us? So we don't have a strict cut-off point because everyone's journey into the profession is different, and we do recognise the value of experience that people have pre-qualification. But I would say, as a very rough rule of thumb, we look for around 5 years PQE. But there are certainly a couple of examples I could think of where we've taken on very competent and experienced people who have had slightly less than that. So certainly don't let that put you off contacting me to have a chat, because we can just tailor that around people's specific circumstances.
I think you need to have reached a point where, as you can say, as we were saying, you can hold a room, you can have some confidence in what. But I was telling Marie yesterday that my very first case as a consultant, we're based in Nottingham. I agreed to drive down to Worthing to see a client, and I didn't feel confident enough to charge for the whole day. So I charged for the meeting, did all the travel free of charge. The meeting went fairly well, but I came back, put the bill in through the course of the next couple of weeks. And Richard Nelson, who runs the firm, sat me down and said, I think you're underselling yourself. And scroll forward about 18 months to 2 years from then, and I had a client meeting with a family who wanted to run a court protection case. And they'd been on the fringes of instructing me for a number of months, and I hadn't managed to kind of reel them in. And then they were going to commit. And I told them my hourly rate, and they said, about the hourly rate, how about, and then they pitched it about 50% less. And I more or less said in so many words, there's the door, because even though I'd spent some time trying to encourage them to be, to go on the journey with me, I wasn't prepared to compromise to that extent. And they agreed to the hourly rate that I wanted. because
Brilliant.
I'd spent the time with them. But I'd got to that point where I was sufficiently confident to know my own value.
Yes, and knowing your own work.
And at 5 years PQE, you're probably
Yes.
at that level.
Probably.
Where
Yes,
you've done some seminars, you're a bit of an expert.
Yes.
But you've also got a lot to learn, and I've still got a lot to learn many years later.
Yeah, I'm sure we all have. And the day we stop wanting to learn is probably the day we ought to stop. I'm just very conscious of the time now, and I think we're drawing to an end for this chat. So we've really enjoyed hearing your questions and looking at what you wanted to ask, and hopefully we've been able to answer those all for you. Going forward, if anyone wants to take this offline and have a personal conversation, I'd be more than happy to do that in full confidence. And so please contact me either through LinkedIn or through the firm's website, and I'm more than happy to sort of arrange that and answer any other questions that you might have, to be able to equip you to make an informed decision about whether it's right for you and whether we're right for you and whether we're right for each other, I guess. So we'll draw that to a close, but thank you very much for your time, and thank you, Ian, for volunteering to be my guinea pig for this live webinar, which hopefully has gone well.
Sorry for the phone interruption.
It's really live. Okay, thanks everybody.